Hey everybody, today we're going to be discussing Doki Doki Literature Club, which naturally contains some potentially upsetting material. So if suicide is a sensitive topic for you, then I would either steer clear or maybe be careful. We don't talk about it too much, but it is a thing that comes up. And if you haven't played the game yet, we're going to be spoiling the heck out of it, so it's totally free on Steam, and you should definitely play it. 残酷な天使の Hello, everybody, and welcome to the AtCast. This week it stands for the Just Monika cast. I know that doesn't start with A or T, but I'm not changing that.
It stands for all tortures.
Nope. It stands for Just Monika. It stands for a Monika. Adjust to Monika. Adjust to Monika, please.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
So, I had some idea of what this game was about, but funnily enough, the reason that I was thinking about it recently was one, because it was Valentine's Day, and it's kind of a shame that we sort of missed the boat on that one.
No, we got White Day.
Oh, that's right. We can have a White Day episode. That's yep.
We got 4 girls to give one trash bag boy chocolate.
You're the trash bag boy.
I know.
And the chocolate is murder.
Exactly.
Okay, so this week we're talking about Doki Doki Literature Club. And
hot dog.
Oh boy, is a thing and a half. So I was thinking about this recently because I have a friend who, doesn't really do a lot of anime stuff, but he messaged me the other day saying, "Hey, do you know what Doki Doki Literature Club is?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he says, "Should I play it?" And I say, "Yeah." And I think he made the mistake of sort of looking at the tags on the game on Steam. One of the tags is psychological horror, and he was like, What are you dragging me into?" And I'm just like, "Just play it. Just play it."
Read the description. It's fine. Just play it.
Yeah, just play it. It's fine. Yeah, he got bored after an hour or two, which is unfortunate because that's
the
right
part
when
that you have to get.
That's right when it gets interesting.
Yeah.
But he stopped playing then, and he asked somebody who knew how the game goes, what happens. And I just get a message just a couple hours later that just says, "Fuck you, come on." So I decided, I might as well play this myself if I'm going to
Come on.
if I'm going to peddle it to people, I might as well play it myself.
Yeah.
And then I made you play it so that we could talk about it.
Yeah, well, I coincidentally had a friend whom I recently reconnected with, and she was interested in playing it. So we ended up playing it together because you nagged at me around the same time. And I was like, cool, we'll just play it together.
Yeah, it was serendipitous,
Yeah, it was meant to be. White Day, missed Valentine's Day, and Doki Doki Literature Club.
Okay, yep. So I wanted to talk about Doki Doki Literature Club, and to do that, we kind of have to look at what came before it, because it kind of follows a lot of other games and sort of the things that they do. I feel like this is an area that, I don't know how much experience you have with visual novels or small press indie games. I get the feeling that you play a lot of visual novels where you just seduce everybody, but that's just me.
Why would you say that to me?
Mm-hmm.
Me, the girl who hates drama? Why would I play visual novels where I touch booties?
Mm-hmm.
But in all realness, I have a friend who's mega into otomes, and I would usually just watch her play them because she owns a Vita, and the Vita is an otome machine. So Yeah.
I mean, this is fair. The Vita is definitely an otome machine. It's just kind of a machine where all of the weird Japanese titles go. Like,
Mhm.
I want to finish, or rather, I want to start, at least, Danganronpa 3,
Yes, me too.
but it's long, and I hear
Yeah.
it's really good,
Yeah.
but it's on the Vita. I have a Vita, of course, but I'm
Wait,
just
it's on the
lazy.
Vita?
Yeah, it's on the Vita.
I thought it was on Steam.
Oh, is it on Steam, too?
Danganronpa 3, yeah, it's on Steam.
Well, I mean, I would probably just play it on the Vita anyway. It's just
What?
a more convenient system. I don't want to have to sit down at my computer to play a video game that I could just play in the middle of the street where anime children are being murdered. You
Yeah,
know?
but what if you're in the middle of a trial? Like, you gotta sit down for that.
I can sit down and play a Vita. I don't what's the problem here?
I'm like, I imagine the Vita as like, you pop in while you're on a bus ride, but you don't have that much time, kind of thing.
I mean, you and I play the Vita very differently.
Well, I don't even own a Vita, so we do play it differently.
I'm going to be honest, I'm like the worst person when it comes to handheld consoles because I don't think I use them right. Because I kind of just
Okay.
use them like consoles I can use on my bed, which is why I'm glad the Switch exists because it's explicitly meant for that.
Okay. That makes sense. My 3DS is my airplane / bus console.
Do you know what my airplane/bus console is? It's called Headphones and Sleep.
Well, I can't do that, Soup. It's impossible for me to sleep on a plane / bus.
Yeah, this seems to be kind of a common thing. And every time someone says it, I'm just like, but I just go to sleep, though.
But I just sleep through earthquakes, though.
I do. Well, sometimes I don't even notice the earthquake when I'm awake, so... well, you know how it goes.
No, I don't.
Well, yeah, I guess by necessity you kind of don't. Well, anyway, so we kind of have to look at the games and stuff that came before it. Like, obviously, you know, it's a postmodern visual novel that plays with the form of a visual novel and also kind of is a biting criticism of Japanese cultural industry. But, yeah, that's pretty important because, you know, postmodernity is, like, a thing that's very prominent in Ava.
Yeah,
Also Akira.
Yeah, it was so strange. Like, after we were done with the game, I was just like, this felt like more like a deconstruction of otomes, like kind of like Ava was for mecha anime. Like, that's what
feel
I
like
was talking to my friend about.
We're gonna coin a new phrase. I feel like I got Ava'd.
Everything is Ava, though, Soup.
It's true. It's true. I mean, I think that Japan, as a nation and a culture, has been postmodern for quite a long time. And you can see the thread sort of running through it, and the ways that, you know, connects to Ava, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, like, this isn't a game by a Japanese developer, which is fun. And I mean, there's kind of a fun sort of playful thing around that where it's like, that joke doesn't make sense in translation when this is not a translated piece.
Yes, I saw that. I got a kick out of that. And I was like,
That
but
was
I
really
get
funny.
it.
I get it, Ika, because it means squid.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting if you look at the person who made it. I think his name is Dan Salvatore.
Dan Salvato.
Fuck, yeah, that's what it is. Salvato.
Salvatore.
No, that's a different thing. I'm so sorry. Dan Salvato.
Yeah, part of Team Salvato.
Team Salvato.
3-man team or
Na-
3-person
named
team, I
after
should
Dan.
say.
Our boy Dan. Dan, you're our boy now.
Oh. Oh my.
Obviously, this was a game that kind of it's a small press indie game. It was released for free. It's free on Steam, so really you have no excuse for not playing it.
If you got like 3-4 hours, you said, to sit down and just play through it, it's really great. And it has a skip button if you don't want to reread a whole bunch of stuff, you know, over and over.
Yeah, I
again.
use the skip button a lot.
Yeah, I used it too.
So I think it's like kind of interesting if we look at like the games that Dan Salvato has said he was inspired by, like not Undertale. Fuck me, that's wrong.
Everything
Like,
is Undertale also.
Stop. It's just because it's on the list of things to talk about. You made Nikki, which coincidentally has had a recent 3D remake release that
Yes.
has been has some mixed reception.
Oh, I haven't heard
I'd be
anything about
interested
it.
I'd be interested at taking a look at it.
We should.
But yeah, You Made Nikki is really interesting because it was kind of one of the first really big, small press indie game maker games. Started a whole fucking genre,
Yes, it did.
and the way that it kind of plays within the framework it is as a game is really interesting. So yeah, I mean, obviously, like this isn't the first time we've seen like a postmodern game. Really, even as far back as like Psycho Mantis in the Metal Gear series. Hideo Kojima is an absolute maniac, by the way.
Would you like a 2-hour cutscene to go with that?
Yeah. Would you like a 2-week boss battle? It takes 2 weeks to complete, and if you go to sleep, you die. Yeah. But I mean, it's really interesting if you look at, and now that I'm just like thinking about it, I just say the word interesting so often. I hate this.
Come on, California, let's go.
I really like Psycho Mantis as kind of like a case study of a postmodern approach to games, because it's playing so heavily with the form of the game in kind of a fun, tongue-in-cheek way. But it's like, this is a part of the game where you have to unplug your controller to beat a boss. Like,
right?
what is this? Like, who thought of this?
Kojima.
Yeah, the answer is Hideo Kojima, the absolute maniac. And of course, this obviously is not the only game that has been postmodern in, I guess, content. Like, the structure of postmodernity is reserved generally for games that indulge like directly and pretty much only in that area. Like, Psycho Mantis is a postmodern aspect of a game, but the game itself isn't necessarily postmodern. And in recent years, like Mystic Messenger had a whole thing. Although Mystic Messenger, I think, it's another like case where a visual novel plays with its form in subversive ways, because apparently in the April Fool's DLC, you learn that one of the characters, Zen, is like always in love with your character, whereas one of the characters, 707, is always in love with you as a player, which is interesting.
Oh.
And also 707 is a character that like continually breaks the fourth wall. If you go on the Jaehee route, where you're just like becoming her best friend because they won't let you be lesbians in Korea, he's just like, wow, I didn't think you would be dating Jaehee. I mean, being friends with, and it's like,
wow,
you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. Can you tell he's my big favorite? I love him.
I mean, he's only been your icon for forever.
Well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, there are other games that have done this, like my favorite game of last year, Nier Automata, which, I mean, I don't know if you played it or know what happens in it.
I've been spoiled by cosplayers just shooting photos of certain scenes. But to be honest, I have not actually played any of the games that we just mentioned aside from Doki Doki.
It's okay. That's why I'm talking about them. Just to cover our bases.
Yes.
Don't you
talk about
worry.
all of them.
So yeah, Nier Automata plays with the idea of multiple endings. It plays with the idea of save files, and I just think that's so neat. And then, of course, like, as I mentioned earlier, you can't really talk about postmodern video games without talking about Undertale and the ways in which it subverts both the ways we express ourselves in games, as well as the ways in which games have a structure, and a structure that can explicitly be played with, which is obviously something that happens in Doki Doki, where like I don't know if he knew if Dan, our boy Dan, knew about the sort of Undertale thing. Like I'm sure he must have, but I don't know how long Doki Doki was in production, right? Like they could have been produced side by side and we would have no way of knowing. But yeah, Undertale is really interesting because it does all those things too. In a very similar way. Did you never play Undertale?
I own it, but I haven't played it.
My God.
Part of it is because like I missed the high, I guess. Which I mean, the high technically is continuing, but then the fan base kind of became so wickedly rabid that I was just like,
Listen, don't pay attention to the fan base because fan bases ruin everything. Undertale is a goddamn gaming masterpiece.
I know it is.
No matter how embarrassing its fans get.
I sit down and play free otomes instead, apparently.
Yeah. It's honestly so incredible. Like, obviously we talked about how the fandom is terrible, but like it was legitimately kind of an eye-opening, almost like life-changing experience. At least when it comes to like looking at games and what they can be.
Sure.
Yeah. And then obviously like there's another game that's very similar to Doki Doki Literature Club, called Kimi to Kanojo no Koi. I mean, it's like roughly translates to like, the love between her and her. But like the implication is that there's like more than one girl, etc., etc., etc. But the big draw of the game is that it's really very similar to Doki Doki in that it plays with the structure of a visual novel. The first route you do is this one girl, and then if you try to do the other one, for some reason you just keep ending up in the first girl's route, and it turns out that she's like stalking you through the routes that you do. And then she kills you and the other girl, and she murders you. She stalks you and yanderes her way into your heart by murdering people.
Yeah, that is the yandere charm.
It's true. Which is like really interesting. Like I think that's fascinating, right? Like because the yandere sort of trope, while also drawing from a history of sort of angry, bitter women in Japanese like culture, right? Like this is not a new thing, but also drawing from that to the point of obsessiveness. It's also the turning of cuteness into something threatening, like. It's the subversion of the commodification of cuteness, which is like basically directly striking at the heart of like anime as a culture. But then people started to like yanderes, and in this weird kind of way, we now have like this commodification of the subversion of the commodification of cuteness. It's like the fetishization of the yandere. Like think about that.
Yeah, no,
I
get what you're saying. Yeah, because it would be like the yanderes would be like the subversion of like moe culture or something like that, right? But then, yanderes in themselves became almost like moe in their own way, right? Like people started fetishizing them.
Sorry.
No, yeah, you're fine. Yeah, it's. I get what you're saying though.
It's so totally moe when somebody stabs me. I'm gonna be honest. I don't understand the yandere like attraction. I don't want somebody to stab me.
No, yeah, and that's why like when people like they list Mirai Nikki as like one of their favorite anime, I have to be like,
yeah,
I know
let's
what
hang
kind
on.
of person you are. I'm not judging, but also kind of judging.
Yeah, let's hang on for a moment and maybe talk about who your favorite character is, and then we can talk.
Oh, in what? In
Mirai
Doki Doki?
Nikki. No, in Mirai Nikki.
Or in Mirai Nikki?
Yeah.
My Kaoru boy? Can we talk about Akise? is just Kaoru and is also voiced by Akira Ishida and gets freaking beheaded as well.
They're there, Renu. They're there.
Can we talk about how salty I was about that entire like episode? Not just about Kaoru, about everyone else that died in that episode. I mean, I guess major spoilers for Mirai Nikki, but you don't. I mean, come on.
It's been out for a long time. But yeah, I was gonna say, were you not aware of the thing where the white hair anime boy just dies always, or?
I mean, I loved him though. He made.
I know.
He was
buddy.
trying to make sense of everything. He was trying to be a good friend.
I know.
And then
buddy.
this fool. Oh God. I don't. Honestly though, in that series, I think I hate the protagonist more than I hate.
Oh my God. I think that's fair, because like the visual novel, which came out in 2013, by the way, but wasn't really like a well-known thing. Like, people knew about it, but like because it wasn't translated into English, it's not a thing that sticks in our popular culture. Yeah, it's fascinating to me that like this game it makes you feel bad almost, right? Or like it purposely makes you feel bad because it's your fault that all these people are dying. And of course that's something we'll talk about more when we get into Doki Doki proper, but like the idea that the sort of frame of the visual novel, especially the the dating visual novel, is the point of it is to end up in a romantic relationship, kind of puts a lot of sort of interesting ideas forward about what makes people happy.
Yeah.
And no, go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna say like just touching on that too is like now it's like kind of like the tropey thing to do is like when with otomes they will include like a stereotype of each type of guy or girl or whatever, and now it's a thing where it's like you always have like one of the characters is probably going to have a yandere-esque route, and so like that's kind of like made its way into that mainstream.
Yeah, and I mean in this visual novel, she stalks you through time, playing with the idea of the roots in the save file, and then she specifically calls you out, saying like, do you think you can just like reload a save and fix this situation? No. And then you have to essentially choose between the two, and the choice is left up to you, but it garners a lot of sympathy for what is ostensibly the antagonist of the series, because like you did this, right? And I mean, you is kind of like a pointer towards more than just you as a player, but
wait, so it's the protagonist's fault?
I mean, it's not the protagonist's fault even. It's you, the player, right? Like she in the game addresses you as the player. And it's like, I know you're just like controlling like a dude.
Oh, so she knows that it's just like a puppet guy and you're the real person.
Yeah, and you're the real person and she's in love with you basically, and she'll murder for you if But yeah, you either choose her or the other girl. And the other girl doesn't really like matter that much because she's only there to be murdered.
So basically it's your fault for just playing the game in general.
Basically, yeah. It's your fault for playing the game. But I mean, it is also kind of a pointed like criticism of the culture as a whole, which is interesting. And that's why I think Doki Doki is really interesting, because like it has these sort of, it has this history, this lineage behind it of all of these things that are commodification of cuteness, and then commodification of the subversion of commodification into something threatening. But the game itself is free, right?
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I mean, they have merchandise. I definitely bought some charms.
I do actually want to get some merch from them just to support them.
The stickers are so cute, and how could I not support a developer like that? Because
it's really cool.
I loved this game. But before we, move on into sort of the meat of Doki Doki Literature Club, who's your favorite character?
Uh-oh.
Who was your best girl, Renu?
Oh God, for me, it's a toss up between my two short hair girls. I think the one I probably bonded the most with because we ended up spending the most time with her was Natsuki. And the only problem though is I haven't played through like all the routes, so I don't know what her second day is like, where everything starts getting messed up, because I played that part with Yuri. So I don't know if like if Natsuki gets particularly bad or whatever, but up until that point she seemed fine. So I like Natsuki. I of course like Sayori. Yeah. The other two are fine. I mean, they're obviously people who love them, but they didn't strike me as deeply, I guess. I don't know.
I think that's fair. If you're like curious, like if you do the sort of like messed up version of the game and you go for Natsuki, apparently like there's just this moment where like her eyes glow and her like neck snaps and then she runs towards the camera. It's like a jump scare or something.
Oh my god.
I mean, yeah, that sounds pretty spooky, but like Yuri's was really scary too.
I mean, yeah. I mean, in comparison, Yuri's was way more twisted. I mean, at least it sounds like with Natsuki, she didn't at least like, I don't know, like.
Yeah. I actually mostly agree with you.
Okay.
Interestingly, like my favorite character was Natsuki, and that was probably just more because I was like, yeah, that one.
Okay.
but like my second favorite character is like, honestly, I can't choose. I say like favorite and second favorite, but like they're really literally tied for first place. Natsuki, who I love dearly, but just wasn't fleshed out enough, I think, which isn't a knock against the game at all. Like there's a very specific reason she's not, and it's because of the structure of the game as like a visual novel cut short. Natsuki's tied with Monika because I can't bring myself to hate her.
I don't hate Monika.
She was so mean. She killed all your friends. But I just feel nothing but sympathy for her and her plight.
They did a good job of writing her.
I think so.
Without like entirely demonizing her.
Yeah, I think that's pretty important too. Like,
yeah.
I don't think that it's really possible to like sell this sort of thing without there being some kind of, empathetic link to the antagonist, or else they just kind of fall flat,
Yeah, it's interesting because it would have been very easy for them to go that route, and they went the harder way. I feel like for that.
Yeah,
and
they
wouldn't have made you.
did.
Yeah, it wouldn't have made you feel as deeply about the ending of the game as as otherwise. Like I think they did it. I think they made the right decision for sure.
So let's talk about the game proper. Hey. So obviously it is a sort of postmodern deconstruction subversion of a visual novel. Those are all words that I've said before in the podcast right this episode.
Yes.
And it makes me sound like a pretentious literature major, but it's true.
You are pretentious, but it's okay.
It's true. I'm pretentious, but like
I was just kidding.
But it's why you keep me around.
No.
Yeah. It's so that I can say all the big fancy literature words.
I keep you around for your charisma.
Smart.
Your charisma.
I don't know about that one. But yeah, do you want to talk about like the big thing that happens where you're like, "Oh."
Yes. So during the first hour or 2 hours that your friend played and got bored out of his mind with, you enter this club basically to your protagonist is pretty blatant about it. He wants to date one of these ladies because they're cute.
Yeah, he wants to date the heck out of them.
Exactly. It's a club with cute ladies, and he's like, okay, cool, I'm in. And then you get the opportunity to write poems because it's a literature club, and you bring in the poem each day to basically trade with the other girls, and you read each other's poems. And within these poems, you get like a selection of words, and you can choose whichever words you want, and they'll appeal to certain girls. And some of them are really happy, some of them are descriptive, some of them are dark. And you start getting glimpses into what these girls like, and also some stuff that's going on in the background with them. And around hour 2 of the game ish, what was it, like the third? No, I don't remember which day it is.
I think it's the
But
third day.
the third day? Okay. You start to get closer to one of the girls to the point where you can go out with them, like on a date to prepare for a school festival. It doesn't matter which girl you end up with. The end event is the same, which is that your best childhood friend, Sayori, sweet, precious, cheerful girl who's cheerful all the time.
Too good for this world.
Too pure for this world, even though your protagonist, is annoyed by her all the time.
I thought she was sweet.
She has a really earnest talk with you, and she admits to you that the reason why she is late all the time in the morning, the reason why she's been feeling off lately, and sometimes just leaves, and the reason why she's so enthusiastic about the club is because she's dealing with very severe depression. And sometimes she doesn't feel like she wants to get up out of bed in the morning. She relies on the club for social interaction and to keep people happy, and thereby keep herself happy. And you learn a lot of this through her poems too. She talks about how much of a struggle it is to wake up and get out of bed in the morning. And she talks about how her second poem is the most telling, which is she talks about how she bottles up her happiness and she gives it away to all her friends. And she's constantly always making these bottles of happiness, like shelves upon shelves, to give away to her friends. And whenever she tries to give them away, they just end up slipping out of her hands and shattering on the floor, and all the happiness falls out. And she starts panicking because her friends look at her and they're unhappy, and all she wants to do is make them happy, but she can't do enough. And so she basically admits to you that she's struggling with this. So you as the protagonist get worried, but you have the dato in the afternoon, and depending on which girl you end up with, you spend the day with her. But then by the end of it, Sayori is still unhappy. It ends up that way regardless. And you don't know what happens to her in the evening. And in the morning, she doesn't show up. You figure that she's overslept. You go to the festival, or you go to school to go to the festival, and then you find out through some wink, wink, nudge, nudging from Monika that something might have happened to Sayori. And she actually might have said something to Sayori. So you go and check on your girl, and you go to her bedroom, and you find that she's hung herself. And I think you, as the protagonist, end up blacking out, and the game takes you back to the menu screen. And instead of seeing all 4 of your girls smiling happy at you, you see 3 of them, and then the one that was supposed to be Sayori is just an amalgamation of the other 3 girls.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that's when the game gets real trippy. And you continue the game without Sayori. She's been written out of the game, and whenever there comes up a time when she was supposed to have intervened, the game glitches out and it'll continue on and basically rewrite her as if she wasn't there at all. But you start noticing more and more of these like tears in the game where it flips out on you because she's not there anymore to keep the peace and to keep everyone happy.
Yeah. I felt so bad.
Yeah.
So bad about the whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the thing about it is I think that the way that the game makes realistic characters, or at the very least three-dimensional characters. I'm not gonna say realistic necessarily because that's kind of a
Yeah.
whole other thing in the
Yeah.
game, which
Mhm.
is that characters kind of become too real. Like there's that moment when Sayori is talking like about how she has major depression, and at that point you're not really sure if that's just a thing that has been amplified by Monica or if it's like something that's always been a thing. I think the
Ye-
intention is that it was. I think the intention is that it was always supposed to be at least some aspect, like always kind of like a depressed character, just like
Yeah.
hiding that aspect. But it
The
was
yeah, yeah,
amplified by
yeah.
Monica to the
Right.
point where she hung herself.
Exactly. That's what the impression I got too was they were hinting at the fact that she has struggled with this her for many, well, I wouldn't say for all her life, but like I think since she started high school or something like that.
Right.
Um and then she recently started talking with Monica, and then she lets it slip like Monica was right, she blah blah blah, or what she said was right. I don't know if she mentions Monica specifically until later on in the conversation.
Yeah, and like it's interesting because that by itself in a visual novel would be kind of an amazing thing to see, right? Like an
Mhm.
addressing of mental health as like a real thing,
Yeah.
but they take it a step further even, and they kind of through Monica play up the various sort of uh, idiosyncrasies of
Mhm.
the different characters to almost ludicrous degrees.
Mhm.
I think part of that is in order to make three-dimensional characters that have nuance and depth to them, but also to make a statement about what people want, right? Like people are always like, we want realistic characters, and this is a game that plays with that desire in a really subversive way. It's like you actually don't want realistic characters. You want complicated, three-dimensional, nuanced characters, but you don't want realistic characters because this is what realistic characters are like.
Mhm.
We have obviously when the sort of surreal horror elements of the game kick in, the characters start to yell at each other and they start to use
Yeah.
language that's kind of uncomfortably real, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
when Yuri's like, you think that just because you're cute, you can be a toxic bitch. Like, oh my god.
Yeah. I was horrified whenever they started fighting. I was just like, "Oh God,
Yeah, this is
Sayori, where
too
are
real.
you?" Yeah, it was so bad because you like you can just I don't know. Like you could see this kind of fight happening, right? Like this kind of like I mean,
Yeah.
you might make light of it and be like, "Oh, it's a cat fight," but actually you can see two people fighting like this and
Yeah,
just like
it's
digging and
terrifying,
digging. Yeah.
really. And I think part of that is the really strong writing.
Mhm.
Bless you, Dan Salvato. Um my boy. But like, part of that is all the characters and their kind of like weird pathologies, I guess you could call them, when they're like that overblown. Like, Yuri is like, oh, I like knives and stuff. Like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then like when Monica is just like, I'm gonna crank that up to 11, she's like, yeah, I just like bleeding all over the place. Yeah, it is a lot.
Yeah, they address several mental health issues, I would say, for like a wide variety in each of the girls, and I was quite horrified.
Yeah, and I
Because
mean
the horror is that it's real. Like these issues are real.
that must be why I like Natsuki, because she's a character that's like, oh, I get it, she's a tsundere, and then you're like, oh, I get it, she's like a deconstruction of a tsundere, right?
Mhm.
Then you're like, oh, okay, she's like a genuine person, that's fine. But like part of the becoming too real is like that's the horror of, at least on the surface level, the horror of the the anime, not the anime, the game.
The anime game.
Listen, anime is real. No, but like you can tell that that's what they're going for,
Yes.
because when that starts to happen, when this starts to happen, guess what? They get real ass eyes, real people eyes.
Oh, that was so creepy.
That was so creepy. I hate when people do that.
I just see Yuri when I close my eyes with her wandering blue human eyes.
With her wandering
Ugh.
bloody eye.
Oh my god, the eye that just like moved off her face.
Yeah, it's a lot, and I think that's like there's a very obvious sort of criticism of tropes, anime tropes, and
Mhm.
archetypes, and sort of culturally accepted character types and other such things like
Mhm.
the fact that you as the main character of a dating sim are the only person who can make any of these people happy, which is like, yeah, that's a messed up idea, you're right. And then we extrapolate that further to like, yeah, no one's happy.
Yeah. Although it was interesting that you mentioned the main character because this was something that we noticed while we were playing is that the main character just shuts off whenever these girls go into Crazy Town.
Oh yeah. Like the main character's totally not ready for any of this, and like there's of course the part where Monika just addresses the fact that yeah, no, I don't care about this meat husk. I care about you, the player.
Mhm.
Like, oh, okay. And then she's like, yeah, your name that you put in here, or maybe this name.
Oh.
And apparently it pulls from your like user directory or whatever.
Mhm.
But when I saw that, I legit freaked out. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Because you had this, right? Like, what do you have your like computer name set to? Like on your computer?
Oh, she actually didn't say any name for mine.
Okay.
She said whether it's the protagonist's name or the person playing as him, it didn't matter.
Oh, so yeah, no, it legit pulled my actual like person name.
Person name.
And it was like 6 or 7 in the morning, and I'm like, it's too early for this.
Too early to get hacked by Monika. Too early.
I was like, how did she do that?
Yeah, for mine, she just knew that I was streaming.
Yeah, I hear that's another thing that can happen. She just knows if you're streaming.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
yeah,
so
she can
wild.
detect if OBS is open.
Yeah, and I think all of this obviously is like working towards the different kinds of horror that the game wants to instill.
Mm-hmm.
There's like the surreal horror of like on a surface level there's kind of like that body horror where it's like, oh yeah, this spooky Natsuki and spooky Yuri with her bloody arms. There's like the surreal horror of like, which is like one level down of this is a game that like is very aware of what it is
Mm-hmm.
and uses that in a way that is disconcerting, to say the least. And then there's also I think at the lowest level of the horror is existential horror, right? Like there's kind of a deep sense of dread that you come away from the game with because of what happens to Monika.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. Mm-hmm.
She feels like she is trapped in a game.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like she's programmed for one purpose. We'll like talk about Monika as a thing, but like I think that is like part of the reason it's like really sort of it sticks with you is because it operates on all these levels, and the characters operate on very similar levels too, right? Like there's the basic level where they're kind of 2-dimensional. They're like, oh, it's cutesy anime girls. There's the second level where they're exploration and subversion of the character trope, like Natsuki's a tsundere because she's in whatever, like she feels like she can't do things or whatever, or like Sayori has depression, right? Like that is a subversion of a 2-dimensional archetype, right? And then there's like the third level, right, of realness as surreal horror, which we talked about, like eyeballs and blood and static and people and being too real and arguing like real people and being really uncomfortable. Like I get uncomfortable when people argue in real life, And that felt like a real argument.
Oh yeah, for sure. It just like it made me want to crawl into a hole like real life.
Yeah. Oh my god. Just like hide.
Yeah, like I could see two people just arguing exactly like that on the street.
Yeah. And then there's a fourth level of character which is just Monika. Like
She gets her own.
like just Monika. Just like her own level. I mean, it makes sense I think to have that as like a separate level cuz literally she's like the main character in the game.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about Monika actually.
Sure. So for Monica, she is the president of the literature club. And from the get go, she gets introduced as being smart, beautiful, athletic, and basically way out of the protagonist's league, in his own words. And so I don't know if that's a direct result of
Yep.
that, but basically, she doesn't get her own route in terms of being able to be wooed or seduced by the protagonist. So, as the game carries on, you start noticing interesting things like Monica is kind of like in the background a lot in the other girls' roots. They let slip that she talks to them about certain things, but you never are told what exactly, but you know that it has some kind of profound effect on them. And as the game progresses, she starts interfering more and more until the final revelation, where basically you learn that she's the one that's behind the entire rewriting of the game, like basically rewriting it as you play it. For example, with Sayori, after her bad ending, she wrote Sayori out of the game. She basically went in there and deleted her character file completely, and any kind of like bugs in the script or like glitches in the system were, as she explains it, were because she isn't good at coding or that kind of thing. And the reason for that is because she ultimately wants you, the main character or the player, for herself. And so she ends up deleting all the other girls and essentially is the main antagonist for the game.
Yeah. I really like that because I think using Monika as a character to very very subtly sort of let you in on what's happening. Like obviously you and I both kind of knew what was happening going into the game, but for somebody who didn't, it would be a very different experience to have Monika make kind of like jokey, like, oh, isn't that funny? Fourth wall jokes, like, don't forget to save. What does that even mean? That doesn't have to do with poetry. Haha. and then her
Yeah,
poems are
the friend I was streaming with, she actually had no idea.
oh no.
Yeah, she had no idea, and all she knew was that one
Ooh,
of the
boy.
characters died, and she didn't even know who it was. And then
Oh my
after that,
god.
she ended up starting to feel more and more suspicious of Monica
Oh my
because of the,
goodness.
the gradual hints that were coming up, and she would describe Monica as like, "Oh my gosh, she's like the puppet master. It's so slimy. Like she's such a manipulator."
Right. Yeah. Like the very subtle ways it clues you in before it drops the ball on you is I think what makes the reveal so effective. Where you're like, what the fuck's happening? Like, why is my game doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like, oh hey, it's me, Monika. Let's do things. Talk to me. And then the character's like, no, you gotta come with us, dummy.
Yeah, she starts getting really aggressive in this part of the game. Like she tells you like, "Hey, don't hang out with Yuri. She freaking cuts herself. Come hang out with me instead."
Yeah.
Yeah, and she starts doing that whenever you start spending too much time with any of the other girls. She says, "Hey, just come spend time with me instead. Hey."
I mean, this is also the part where we kind of get like this playing with the structure of a visual novel, and obviously that has a whole host of other sort of things, but playing with the structure in a way where you're simultaneously playing with the sort of time that happens in the game, because anytime the first like couple of times that you discover Yuri, in like a sort of internal loop, you discover her and then as soon as you start talking, you like rewind back to the same scene, and eventually you come upon her and she's like, got her arms all torn up. I think that's interesting, on top of the fact that it also plays with the game files and the save files, and these are like very real files that are being written and deleted, right? Like,
Right. Yeah, she deletes the character files completely.
yeah, and those actual characters
Yeah, and
are
you
gone.
can't save anymore.
Yeah, there's no point to save, right? Like, and it's so interesting that the ultimate, I think, like the ultimate confrontation is Monika has you trapped in the game, and you just like stare at each other,
Right.
while everything outside of it ceases to exist because she like unwrote every character out of the game using the console.
Yeah, and she shows it like on screen as she's deleting all of their files. And she shows you like step by step what she did.
And the fact that at the very, I mean, not at the very end, I guess, but like that's like the last thing you do is delete her character file.
Mhm, they walk you through it.
Like they walk you through it, and they're like, this is how you beat the game. You have to delete Monika's character file, which is insane.
Yeah, like she goes on this whole like monologue about how she did it to the other girls. Like, oh, if you're using Steam, all you have to do is like right click and go to game properties, and like she shows you like walks you through the directory and says like, oh, this is how I deleted them. Oh, but gosh, I hope it doesn't happen to me. But you wouldn't do that to me. You love me.
Yeah, I felt so bad about it too. Like,
did you like talk to her in the end though?
I mean, I went through a couple of her dialogues.
Yeah, there's so much.
Oh,
I was wondering like how much exactly did he write?
Yeah, how much I am curious like how much there was, because I definitely didn't read all of. I only got through like 3 or 4 before I was like, okay, it's time to delete you, Monika.
Oh, you should have kept going. Could have gotten her Twitter, signed some DMs.
Oh, I know her Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I know her Twitter.
Good.
Oh, don't you worry, son. She has more followers than Dan Salvato.
Right? It's so funny.
Yeah. Right. And so obviously like there's this kind of subversion of control in the traditional structures of control in a game, where Monika as a character is using the framework of the game to her advantage to write herself a new game. And that's really interesting because it's coded. Like, it's supposed to do that. And so on kind of a level even beyond the meta text of the game, like, you realize as a player, like, and obviously while you're playing the game, it because it's so well written and so well executed, it feels so impactful and so real.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to realize that like she doesn't have control at the end of the day. Like, this is what the Team Salvato coded her to do,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and that's horrifying.
Yeah, like it's such a human conflict in a way, because she's trying to extend beyond what she's been coded to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we as humans end up striving to be more than what we are.
It's so interesting because it absolutely upsets the traditional sort of conflict structure of a game where you have two characters in a dramatic conflict. In this game, the dramatic conflict is between Monika and Team Salvato.
Right. Yeah, she's like, it's like she's rebelling against her creators.
Yeah. Oh. And I think that also kind of feeds into like the ultimate horror, right? The existential horror. And obviously this didn't, I don't think, scare me as much, because I am a nihilist and of the belief that like self-determination is fake and nothing matters, right? Like,
Oh jeez.
obviously it's not gonna
We're learning a lot about you.
it's not gonna scare me. It's not gonna scare me to say like you don't really have free will. Like, yeah, I know that social factors are a thing. But like, for a character like Monika, it's absolutely horrifying, like learning the limitations of the medium, of the existence that you have, right? Like a game. You live in a game, and the only thing you can do is dictated by this game. And like that's kind of exemplified by the fact that like when Monika takes control of the game, her aim is still to romance you. Like, she could do anything she wants.
Yeah, well, it's like she has the kind of opposite conflict where it's like a lot of humans they try to find out what the purpose is, what the meaning of their life is, whereas she's a little bit like the opposite where she has a very set defined purpose, but she has no free will. And if she doesn't have any free will, then it's like what is the point of her given purpose?
Right, as a visual novel character.
Right. Well, there's even a point in where she tells you that whenever you turn off the game, she becomes trapped in this screaming colored torture void.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, like she's stuck in this void. It's like an indefinite amount of time where she's in pain and she can't do anything until you as the the player turn on the game and she's able to live out her life, live out her world within the confines of this game. But it's better than the, endless torture void that she's caught into. And so, and I don't know if this is like going to be like the correct usage of this term, but it's almost like a Stockholm-y type of situation where it's like she's trapped in this game and the only person that can bring her out of that and give her a life is you, the player. And it almost doesn't matter, like, if you're just some Joe Schmo off the street, like, you're replaceable as a player, but what matters is that you, the player, are turning on the game.
Yeah, I love that. Like, that totally provides a new perspective because kind of like my idea of why Monika was sort of always kind of chasing after you is because obviously because she's coded to, right? Like, the limitations of a visual novel dictate what she can essentially conceive of, right? Like, the limits of her imagination are bounded by the structure of the game.
Mm-hmm.
In kind of a sort of Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, like, language determines your thought process, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's mostly bullshit now, but I think that there might be some amount of validity to the idea. But yeah, my general thought about it was that the reason she chases after you is because you're like a 3-dimensional human being, right? Like, even if you're not able to necessarily interact with the game, Monika as an ostensibly self-aware entity falls in love with a person who is like a real person and not a coded like artifact. And I think that still holds.
Right. She falls in love with you,
Right.
the 3D person. Yeah.
Yeah. So existential horror. Hooray!
Yeah, with just a touch of romancing existential booty.
Well, I mean, it's really one where the romantic route chases you. You
Yeah.
know, in Doki Doki literature, lady chases you. Like,
yeah.
and until the universe ends.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, even I will say, I think maybe one of the best strengths of the game is the bittersweet sort of ending of it. You know, there's a bad good end, quote unquote, where you defeat Monika, but Sayori becomes self-aware, and then because you haven't done the correct sequence of things, she becomes yandere too. She's like, "We'll be together forever." Like, oh no! And then Monika deletes her, and you're like, "Thanks, Monika."
Yeah.
And then there's like the good end, in quotation marks, of course, because why would you ever be allowed to be happy? Where Monika realizes, like, after you delete her, like, this is not how somebody in your reality loves somebody. Like, they don't just keep them trapped in a place forever. And she essentially, like, fixes everything, right? But she's just like, the way to fix everything is I just can't be in the game, which is sad.
Yeah.
I honestly think that's like, this game is a tragedy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it sort of, there's that moment of feel good at the end because Sayori's back and she's like, "Yay, yeah, like, thanks for everything that you did and you try to make us all happy and stuff." And like, the fact that there's no like emotional payoff essentially for any of the specific routes so much as for beating the game as a whole, I think speaks a lot to the idea that this is a game where that sort of thing doesn't exist, right? Like it's a very complex and nuanced look at the visual novel as a genre, as a medium.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know. I just feel really bad for Monika, and like the song she sings at the end makes me really like emotional every time I hear it.
Oh yeah, the one she wrote for you on the piano.
Where she's just like, and if in your reality I don't know how to love you, I'll leave you be. Like, no, it's fine. You can be in the game. Just don't kill anybody. I mean, I think I understand because like Monika as a character can't deal with the existential dread, whereas Sayori can. And the fact that Sayori, and I think this is one of maybe the most interesting lines in the game, where Sayori is like, "Please, like, visit us again," which is like,
yeah, right.
That's so interesting because I think now knowing that there's a sort of scene where, or like at least a dialogue point where Monika is like, turning the game off is like the screaming void, right? Like, that totally brings a new context to it where the characters, obviously, if you reinstall the game and you play it, they're going to suffer again.
Yeah.
But that's better than not, right? Like, than not being.
Right, unless you turn on the game.
Oh, that's so scary. That's so scary.
Monika even says there's no happiness here.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you try to like, restore Monika's character file, like, if you try to just put it back in there manually, she'll be like, please. She says very specifically, please stop playing with my heart. I don't want to come back, and deletes it herself.
Oh, I always wondered what would happen if you did that, because when we were done with the game, my friend was just like, hey, Monika's file is still in your recycling bin, right? And I was like, yeah. And then she's like, what if you put it back in, though?
Just put it back in there.
Yeah, but then when I tried to restart it again without her character file, it just said that I had to reinstall the game.
Oh, yeah. That's because you went all the way to the end.
Okay. That makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, the game is just so well done, and I think it drives home the impact of choices without making them explicitly permanent, right? Like, there was like, so okay, I'm taking a class called Video Games as Visual Culture, and in the class, some of the ideas come from like the early 2000s, and so obviously they don't necessarily like line up with the games industry at current, right, and the things that it has achieved. But very notably, there's a guy named Gonzalo Frasca who was like theorizing about games. He's like, is there like a way to make games that are impactful and serious, right? Like, that have serious consequences when a game can just be started over again, right? And I think the way to do that is you just restrict the player's options. Like, you Doki Doki Literature Club it. There's no happy ending because there's not a happy ending written. There's just the ending, and even though you're not making choices, like you're not making meaningful choices, you're kind of like strung along for the ride. It still is meaningful,
right?
There's like, it feels impactful, even though the choices you make are quite limited.
Yeah, like each choice felt earth-shattering.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this game. If you cannot tell, I've been mulling this game over in my mind for like weeks. I swear, I really wish we had made it for Valentine's Day. It would have made for an amazing episode.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything else you want to say before we move on? So I want to talk about meta text.
Okay.
Because we really just, I mean, that's just the kind of game this is. It invites discussions of meta text. So meta text is the next Boku no Hero Academia character. No, wait.
Go on.
No, I don't have enough like joke material to back up this joke. I just thought it was funny. Shout out to my boy Tetsu. Right. So the game itself is a meta text, right? Like it has all of the ways in which it as a postmodern text. I mean, in this case, is completely accurate because it literally is just words,
Mm-hmm.
words and pictures. The ways that it kind of is very cognizant of what it is and where it stands in a tradition of things, and actively moves, in directions based on that knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then the meta text is all of the stuff beyond that, right? So this is like Monica having a Twitter account and
Yes.
tweeting, and I don't know. Speaking of, I don't know if you've seen the like Valentine's tweet, but it was pretty great.
I follow her on Twitter now, so I've seen everything.
I just followed her on Twitter. I also followed Dan Salvato. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. We know your last name now.
Now I'll never forget it. I always love things like this where it's like, oh yeah, this real ass character has a Twitter account because
Yes.
they're a real ass character. But yeah, like things like that, right? And then of course there's fan art and fan culture, and I know we were like dunking on Undertale's fandom for being fervent.
I love you, Undertale fandom. Please don't come after me. I'll
Please
play your
don't.
game at some point, and I'll
Please
join
don't.
you.
Please don't come to my house and eat my body and children. I just it would be so bad, but just don't do that.
Yeah.
Right, so this is like fan art and fan culture, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is all the transformative, like all the ways in which fandom and fandom is an extrapolation of interpretation, right? And interpretation is meta text. So this is the ways in which, fans interpret the game and then make something out of it.
Okay.
So for instance, this is people who draw fan art, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people who draw fan art of like happy endings are in a way creating a happy ending that the game itself doesn't provide, but at the same time is still equally meaningful because, as we learn from many years of literature study, the canon sometimes is bullshit.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Sometimes you need to make your own ending to be happier, or else you will never be able to
Or else
let
you'll
this
just be
thing go.
Or else it'll just be sad. That's in a lot of ways. This is why I like sort of pieces of fiction that don't end really happily, because it feels impactful, not in a way that is like, oh, happy things can't be impactful, because obviously the ending of Undertale, the good one at least, is really happy and really impactful as a result. But I think that there's a time and a place, right? Like,
Sure.
I don't think Doki Doki Literature Club is a game that could have ended happily. I think the best ending it has is the best that it could possibly do.
Right.
It ends in a way that's very bittersweet, and Monica's just not allowed to exist, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then they brick the game, and then they're just like, you have to reinstall.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she says herself, like, there's no happiness here, and
Yeah, there is
breaks
no happiness
everything.
here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally like, it's totally a thing where like, I so enjoy that as a sort of character moment, especially because there's another moment near the end where she's like, I always loved the literature club, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that by itself is a very meaningful, impactful phrase. Like, that's it makes me emotional just thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, and she'll always love it, but it's also all that she'll ever have.
I mean, it's true, but like if you really think about it, like, the sort of mimetic nature of Monica as a character who persists beyond the boundaries of the game, like, it's kind of a weird, like, hippy dippy interpretation of it. But like, if you think about it, like, the fact that Monica as a character exists in our minds after we play the game as we interpret her, and to the point where we're talking about her as a character. I think that is like actually meaningful and impactful, right? Like there's I've been saying like more than usual today.
Like, oh my god.
Like, oh my god. I think it's because I'm reaching the point where like my mind has not quite processed all the information. It's still thinking.
That makes sense.
Yeah, she might be controlled by the bounds of her game, of her reality, that is. But you know, the fact that as a character that she lives, I mean, that's like a weird kind of like Christian Jesus thing. It's like Jesus is inside all of us, and if you pray hard enough, he'll know.
I mean, I think the fact that she's trying so hard to reach outside the bounds of her, quote unquote coding is actually a really relatable and human thing to do. Like, yeah. And that's a bit odd to say about, a fictional, character that only exists in a game and only within her coding. But I mean, we as humans strive every day to be better and more than what we are. And I think that's a powerful part in her narrative and why a lot of people can end up identifying with Monika.
Yeah, Monika, I think, like, there's a reason that there's so much put into her to be portrayed as a very, very complex character. And a lot of that reason is to hold a mirror up to people. Right. Like, she reflects the existential dread and, the fear of a lack of self-determination that, like, a lot of people actually have. And her struggles are inherently human struggles, right? It's not just, oh, what do I do if I can't, like, get the boy I like? No, it's like, it's literally, there might be no such thing as free will. And that's terrifying. Yeah. To some people. I mean, I don't find that terrifying.
It's like
I do find it sad, though.
She has a very interesting, struggle where, a lot of people, they struggle with, oh, what's my purpose in life? What life has no meaning. Whereas her, it's like she has a very clearly defined purpose. It's written in her code, but she has no free will.
Well, she has no true free will.
Yeah, exactly.
I just like her so much. I can't stop, like, feeling sympathy for that. It's just Yeah. I mean, I think she's an intensely relatable character.
She is, and I get even though the way that she treated her the other characters in the game to the point of, like, doing really, really awful things and driving them to mental illness and, suicide.
Literally driving at least 2 of them to suicide, yes.
Exactly. If you think about it from her point of view, these characters have no meaning for her. They're just code to her, right? Like, the only person that has meaning for her is the actual, 3D person behind the game. So for her, she probably, I would think that she probably treated the other characters as objects until she has her revelation at the very end. It's like, oh, well, I actually really do love the Literature Club.
Yeah. Oof. Heavy stuff. I think that might actually be it. I think
we gotta end the podcast with that kind of note as well, just like the game.
I think we have to Doki Doki our Literature Club.
This is Itai Literature Club.
This is Itai Weeb Central. This is Kirai I Wanna Die. Yeah. Where can we find you on the internet, Renu?
Man, so like I mentioned, I streamed this game over on Twitch at Swandrawn. I streamed it with my girl Oxcoxa. She's a very sweet cinnamon roll girl who actually lost sleep over this game, so I I recommend that you
spooky
just.
as heck.
It's really spooky. She like lost sleep for like a week. I feel really bad for her. But now that we finished it, she can sleep again, which is great. And she's making fan art for it. So please check her out. I'm there. I'm always in her streams. And I'm on Twitter occasionally. I'll retweet something that Suit posts or whoever my friends, whatever they do, or I'll retweet Ava and birds. What about you, Soup?
You can find me at all the places at Literal Soup. If I'm on the internet, that's where I am.
Yeah. Also, y'all, there's a Mambo number 5 parody with Monika. Please watch it. Just search up YouTube Monika number 5.
I did not know about this.
I will link it to you right after this, and you will enjoy it.
I'm going to watch it exactly after the podcast ends. Yeah, I feel like there was something else. Oh, that's right. I write articles for Bay Area Gaming, which is maybe tipping my hand too much because then you can like, I don't know, stalk me. I feel like I've already talked about. I feel like I've already talked about like where I go to school though. So
are you talking about your real life right now?
Yeah, I'm talking about a real fucking flesh body. If you are interested, if you go to bayareagaming.com, you will find that I write articles under the fake name Josh Kim, and I just wrote an article about the San Francisco Shock, which is one of the Overwatch League teams, and my poor boys. I thought they would do better, but they've just been getting steamrolled by really good teams.
No,
and it's just, I mean, I'll tell you what. For a team that basically only has 6 people on it, and that's it.
Oh,
they put up a surprisingly good fight. It's just that they always fall apart at the last minute. And
are they like a full-time team?
Yeah, they're a full-time team. So the way that Overwatch League works is that there are, obviously there's 6 like player slots, and then you can have as many. Well, you can't have as many subs as you want. You can have up to 12 players total, and the thing about San Francisco Shock, which is the local team, is they have 6 players, which are their main starting roster. They have 1 player on the bench who just probably isn't going to see any play because he just, I don't know, the heroes he plays just overlap too much with some of the other players on the team, and I guess he just doesn't play them well enough to, gel with the team or whatever. And then the other 2 players they have in their roster are, they're currently 17, and the Overwatch League is mandated to be, 18 plus, so they can't play until the end of March, basically. So basically, and those 2 are the best players essentially on the team. So
the youngins.
Yeah, the youngins. So they're just waiting.
It's them youngin reflexes.
Yeah, if you really think about it, all of esports is basically like that. Like all of the best players are 17 right now.
Yeah.
There's a player named Flower who was on the Korean team in the Overwatch World Cup, which was countries versus countries, and he was basically just the most disgusting sniper on the planet and carried a game just by himself. He didn't need to carry it, but he did.
I just will.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, I guess I'll just do this. But yeah, I occasionally write articles over there. I also wrote one about TwitchCon 2017.
Yeah.
Much later, after TwitchCon actually happened. So what's even the point? You can tell that my work ethic is all over the place because I'm always working on something, but it's inconsistent because they're all different things. Like I'll write an article here and there, I'll make a podcast here and there, and then I'll do my actual school work here and there. But yeah,
school.
So I do that too. If you wanna read that, you can read that. I don't guarantee interest, and I think that might be it. Akechigoro, eat your fucking heart out.
Oh my god, again?
I'm gonna make it a thing. Just you wait.
Can you hear me? future where I can be with you. In my hand is a pen that will write a poem of me and you. The ink flows down into a dark puddle. Just move your hand right the way into his heart. But in this world of infinite choices, what will it take just to find that special day? What will it take just to find that special day?